All right, we're live.
We're live. We made
Hemati
it.
HUMP Day. So yeah, January 28th, man, and we're deep into the first, 200 hours of
Oh my
the
gosh.
Trump administration 2.0. Um, but lot to talk about. I thought last week it was kind of like, oh, what are we going to talk about today? But today there's just no shortage of stuff. I think I've just been like, I mean, so much has happened this week. But before we jump in to
Mhm.
whatever we're going to talk about today, I think it would be good to touch on two things, just to kind of like recap for our audience, because I do get comments and feedback from people as they watch and stuff, and so I thought one of the things that we could just address is, first of all, like, what kind of preparation do we do, for the show? Do you want to comment on that?
Can it be expressed using negative numbers, or do we have
Right,
to use?
right.
No,
So, oh
we hit
man,
the button, and then like wherever the conversation takes us, it takes us. Now, there've been a couple times where one of us had mentioned like, "Hey, I want to make sure we talk about this," but it's usually like a bullet point,
right,
and that's it. Yeah.
right.
So when one of us says like, "No, I haven't heard that. Tell me more." It isn't just setting the other person up for stage management. It's like, no, I'm about to learn something new.
Yeah, like I really don't know this one, right? So, yeah, and I think it's worth just kind of hitting on like kind of how we came up with the idea to do the show in the first place. Just as kind of a recap, is, like, we would, I mean, for the past, I don't know how many years, we've been really good at like, um, just catching up with each other every couple of weeks, and like, hey, what's going on? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And we would just have these like freewheeling conversations. And at some point, one of us said, I can't remember which one it was, but it was like, man, we should do it. We should do a podcast. And so we've really just tried to. Now we don't talk offline as much as we used to, because we're getting
It's
caught up every week on this call. But to me, the conversation has always been about what's going on in the world, and what are maybe a different or a unique spin on or perspective that you can take on, what's going on. Because it's so easy to just get. I mean, the reality of like today's life is, we're all in our bubbles, and like, I mean, to a certain extent, as much as I try to get out of my bubble, I'm still kind of in the bubble, just in terms of like your preconceived notions, biases, confirmation bias, all that different stuff. You are too. Everybody is. And so like this kind of dialogue has been really, initially we thought it was going to be a lot more
fireworks.
confrontational. Yeah. Like,
No,
uh,
you.
ironically, like, just because we've been so disciplined about having the conversation, consistently, it's actually helped, I think, both of us evolve like different views on, oh, actually, that's a good way to think about that. I hadn't thought about that. Or, oh, you know what, maybe I was wrong on that one, or I need to think about that again, or whatever. So what are your comments on that?
Well, I agree, and I think that I think there's an effect that a lot of people have that we get to really appreciate. Not everyone does. So if you're typing something online to someone, you disagree with someone online, and it's pretty often that people will say stuff that if that person was standing in front of you and you said that, uh, you know,
You might get punched in the face.
you
Yeah.
might get punched in the face, but like
Yeah.
for sure the friendship is over, right? But you don't think about that because like this anonymous person online, they're a fool, they're an idiot, and I kind of want them to block me because screw them. And so you can't do that if you're face to face. But there's another layer. So it's like, okay, we're face to face, but also other people are watching. And they're like, well, I don't want to say that because that would be really unreasonable. And I'm like, well, actually, do you want to be unreasonable in the first place? Well, no. So maybe you should listen to that person. So we get this extra layer that I think would be really useful for other people to have. So I don't know how to arrange something like that. It's like have your discussions in public somehow. Um, I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
But
Totally,
I think
man.
it's
It's
been
like,
helpful. I like it.
me too. Me too. Big time. So that's kind of to kind of give you guys that are watching some context. Like, we have no idea what either one of us is going to say. We're just gonna tackle it and see what happens. And when we run out of time, we run out of time. So sometimes the shows are an hour. Sometimes they're. I mean, I think we've had them up almost up to 3 hours.
That was a mistake, though.
That was a long.
Yeah.
We're not Joe Rogan here.
No, nobody has
Okay,
time.
so the second thing I wanted to hit on was something that we had talked about last week.
Okay.
We had and one of our audience, my friend Amber, had kind of written me, and she didn't really take issue with what we were saying, but she was really more like, we were talking about, if you remember, the idea of racism from that conversation I'd had with my friend, and how my friend had said, racism is not, I said that racism was making, prejudicial statements, beliefs, et cetera, holding different thoughts about people because of their race, and that's racism. So white people could be racist against black people could be racist against white people, Mexican people could hate both of us, whatever the case may be. But her contention was, no, it's more of a power dynamic, and so it's impossible for a minority to be racist against a majority person, because the power dynamic is, anyway, and I suspected that it was a matter of definitions and whatever. And if that's the way we're redefining racism, then whatever, I'll get on board with it. We just have to figure out what is the word when you just have prejudice against somebody because of the color of their skin that has nothing to do with their position in society.
And maybe we can all be against that thing, whatever it is we decide to call it, no matter where it comes from, or maybe not. Maybe everyone has their own views on that, but like, it's okay.
Well, it was interesting because she sent me something to read and something to watch. And she was like, hey, I think this will really help, kind of, the subject's a lot more complex than you're allowing for it. And why don't you consider this? So, Amber, if you're watching, I did not read the book that you gave me, but I did watch the movie. It's called Origin. And I recommend it. It's good. It is, it's about this writer who, true story. It's interesting. The book that she gave me to read was the book that this writer had written. And the movie actually not only explores the themes in her book, but also like couches it in the story of her trying to write the book. So it's a really cool kind of meta look at just that writer's process in addition to the ideas that she was putting out there. Cool. And not to be a spoiler or whatever, the movie's absolutely worth watching, but the nutshell of all of it is that, in her opinion, the writer's opinion, that it really boils down to a caste system, CASTE, a caste system, like what they would have in India, for example. And that, historically. So so for those of you that don't know what a caste system is basically like a socially enforced, like if you're this level of person, then your career track, your life, everything like that is going to be in this margin here. And if you're this type of person, you have these range of choices, but you are not allowed to participate in this tier of opportunity.
Think of like the nobility in England. It's like, if you're not a member of one of these families, it doesn't matter what you've done.
Right.
Your achievement you've earned. It's
achievements beside the point. It's like, you're not. And I think it's kind of interesting. I was a few weeks ago somehow caught part of Titanic again. It was on TV.
Oh yeah.
And which that's a great movie. And and that's set in America back when we actually did have a much more enforced caste system. And it was kind of interesting because these people are sailing from I think it's is it America to England or England to America? I can't remember.
England to America, yeah.
England to America. But on the boat, it's this very socially enforced, like, he's got this kind of ticket, so he's not allowed to eat in this car, and with the quality, so to speak, right? And that's what they actually said. Oh, you're eating with the swells, with the quality, and let's go downstairs where the people are, right? And it was kind of that idea. And what this author was putting out in her book was basically that's what we have in America, is we have a caste system, whether we want to admit it or not, that the permanent upper class, which is white people, basically control everything, and everybody else is basically they're fighting for these scraps, and we'll find a token person here and there that we can elevate and say, hey, it's a land of opportunity, blah, blah, blah.
Fair. Yeah.
Right. but in reality, those opportunities are a mirage.
I
And
see.
so, yeah. And so, what are your thoughts on that? I wanted to give it an airing because she watches all the time, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's really interesting. I don't think I'm really that opposed to that view. Like, I think that's pretty reasonable. I think there's some good observations behind it. It seems then that like the most important thing then is class rather than caste, because and if you are doing something based on caste, if you want to use that term, it doesn't seem like it's divided based on race. Because if it were, then I don't know how to explain all those white people dying of fentanyl overdoses because their towns have been ravaged by globalism and so on. Whatever. You know, like it's like, oh, how did being white help you there? And it's like, well, it turns out it didn't do anything for you. Nothing. In fact, maybe it's made it to where your suffering is less important because you're someone who should have been
Yeah.
in a good.
Nobody cares. Yeah. Nobody cares because,
Oh,
you're not yeah.
no, another white redneck dies or whatever. Yeah, so what?
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. Like I just don't see how. I mean, I think we could definitely do this based on money, and especially if we were talking about like old money versus the nouveau riche, and like the different signals and schools and um, internships and legacy uh, um, university spots remain open. So like it's like, well, I can definitely see it for wealth, um, but I
Yeah.
don't
I
see
think it's
how that would be. You would divide it based on race. I mean, other than the fact that it happens to be true historically that we have a higher percentage of wealthy white people, say, if we were counting them up. Um, but I don't know. It doesn't seem like that's a race thing to me.
it is. I mean, it's interesting because I think to me what was really present after watching the movie was just kind of wow, that's something I hadn't really thought about. Um, and it's not so much. I think what I kind of like after thinking about it for several days is like, okay, I uh, I don't think. I think two things can be true at the same time. Like we said, what they say, two things can be true. And
Mhm.
is that the the idea of racism being fundamentally prejudice against somebody's color, and classism being not wanting your daughter to date that guy from the other side of the tracks or whatever the case may be, right? Or you know I mean, shoot, I mean, I know people in the South that don't want their kids dating Yankees. I know Republicans that don't want their kids dating Democrats that like can't imagine having Thanksgiving dinner with their Republican relatives, right? I mean, there are there are all these artificial, well, artificial. I mean, they're real divisions, but
Mhm.
they're also when I say artificial, I mean they're here. You know, they're I have these ideas, you have those ideas, therefore I'm better than you somehow, right?
Mhm.
And not a better person, but I just have better values or better whatever the case may
Right.
be, right? And I think to whatever extent that we can again attempt to like listen and understand each other, with spirit of love, frankly, like that's where if there is progress to be found, it's along that path. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, I sometimes it's hard for like once we kind of nail down like, okay, what is this thing that you're talking about, like a system of oppression? Who's benefiting from it? Who's being harmed by it? I think a lot of times if you push on it enough, if you sort of pull the sweater enough, it's only superficially about anything involving race or national origin. That's like there might be some mapping onto there, but almost like a secondary characteristic. Sort of like if I was,
What do you think the fundamental characteristic is?
well, what I'm saying though is it would be like if I was selecting all of the red haired people I would accidentally also select that, most of them would have blue or green eyes. And it's just
And they'd
like,
all be psychos. So
yeah, they would be. Don't date them. But like, it's not like, well, I was trying to pick out all the red and green eyes people. I was trying to pick out the red haired people, and that's the group that I also picked up. And so if someone came along and said, "Oh, I see what you're doing. You're finding the green and blue eyed people." Be like, yeah, that happened, but that's not what I was really trying to do. So if it's like, well, okay, we're gonna go. If there's a class system that seems to systematically privilege some people over others. And it's like, hey, if you're someone who's never worked at a company that didn't involve A, nepotism, or B, a enormous golden parachute, it's like, how interesting, you're the one, but then it's like, well, if we map that out, it's like, oh, interesting. 80% of those people are white, or they're from like a Germanic or English background or something like that. Like, well, that's interesting. But were we selecting the white people, or are we selecting the rich people?
mm.
And I
And
feel like
did the
we're
rich people
selecting the
just
rich people.
yeah.
And
Well, it's
80% of them.
interesting. It's interesting too. Like the other thing that kind of came away with was this idea that, and I don't see how you could argue with this, but the whole idea of, so I'm a huge fan of the idea of merit, right? Like put the best person in for the job, put the best student in for that available slot at the, in the think tank, whatever the case may be. And at the same time, the idea that this achievement that this person has done, right? Like here's this person who has a lot of merit. The idea that that achievement is all something they did by themselves is, 0% true in, probably 100% of the situation. I mean, I hesitate making absolutes like that, but it's like, look, if you didn't have, either the kind of parents that you had, or the kind of foster parents that you had, or the particular orphanage that you were sent to, or the school that you went to, or that one teacher that you had in second grade, or the whatever. And you can go down this whole list of stuff that all of us are a amalgamation, or a Lego set basically built with other people's influence and input and assistance. And sometimes that assistance is positive, like in many cases, like I just mentioned, like those would be positive assistance. Sometimes they're negative assists, right? It's like the dad that told you like you're never going to make anything of yourself, or
I'll show him.
Yeah, I'll show you. And I think those and I mean, how many people? I mean, like I'm certainly wired that way. I've imagined 99% of people listening are wired that way. It's like, dude, don't tell me like what I'm capable of. And it's like, but had that person not said that to me, and had I not cared at that moment what they thought, then I wouldn't have responded. I still wouldn't have moved and actually done anything. So like, I think it's, I was just filled with this sense of gratitude, really, of like, man, it's just really grateful, that we have friends that watch the show, that can comment on our ideas. B, that like, oh man, that we've been fortunate enough to have all the different things interacting in our lives that made us who we are. So
you don't think there's like a balancing act there? Like, yeah, I mean, you're a poker player, right? You can tell. Well, you've played from time to time, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be like two players that you don't want to be, right? You don't want to be the player that always blames the cards when they lose. They're like,
right.
You don't want to be that person, because like, hey, if you couldn't make that hand work, I mean, that's your problem.
That's on you. Yeah.
But
right.
Also, you don't want to be the player that's like, I don't even care what the hands are. I'm going to win anyway. The hands are irrelevant to me. There's only my skill. It's like, no, actually, the cards also play a part. Maybe over time we could plot it to where it's like, regardless of the cards, you're going to win. But it's for any particular game. There's a balance there.
It's so funny, man. That you said that. I have poker on like all the time when I'm working. It's like in the background of my television, and
other people have their news. You're like, I don't know what's going on.
It's news. Well, so there was this. So if you guys use Pluto TV, that's free. They have World Poker Tour and Poker Go channels, 24 hours a day poker games, right? And so it's free. It's great. So anyway, literally, I think it was today's Tuesday. Yesterday, I was sitting here. I was on hold, And there was this sequence where this guy was, they were at the final table. Finally ends up with two of them. The main guy, who's been ahead the entire time, he's got like 4 times the stack of the other guy. And they end up going in on this hand. And the one guy who's got the smaller stack is like, okay, well, these cards are good enough. I got to go. And so he's all in. And the other guy, he happens to call him with, so the one guy has like a 9-10, the other one has an ace-9. And the big chip guy has ace-9. Of course, yeah, dominated, right? And so snap calls, out comes the flop, no help, right? And pardon me, they each paired their 9 on the flop, right?
Okay,
and
whatever, yeah.
And the guy's got 2 cards left. The only thing that will help him is a 10. And he's got 2 cards. It's like whatever that is, 11, 12% odds of hitting it. And and he hits it, And what's amazing is the guy who
4%. Tony says 4%.
Like
4%.
The one guy's all in. They're the final 2 people. So they got the big stack of money out there. Like this guy is like, oh, I'm about to win this. It's going to be great, right? He's excited, whatever. And, out comes that 10. And you could just see his body just deflate, like, and 3 hands later, he's out and the other guy wins, right? Because and it was so interesting, dude, because again, like just up here, and it's easy for me to obviously like make this comment watching on the TV screen.
You're not totally sitting there with the adrenaline.
I'm not in the hot seat with millions of dollars of cash on the table, but it's so interesting to observe because I'm like, man, how many times have I done that to myself? Like where you are in grasp of something that you're just right there. You can taste it. There's the finish line, and it's in your hands, and it's there. You're done. You win. You did it. Whatever it is, right? And then it gets taken from you at the last minute. And now that guy was not down to 0. He was still the chip leader after that hand.
Yeah.
But because
mentally he was down
mentally he was toast, right? And it's like, and the other guy knew it, and you smell blood, and he just went and just crushed the guy in 3 hands. And it's like, man, you mess with somebody's psyche like that, and they're not capable of anything. And I think it's really interesting, just to finish that conversation on. So to me, the overriding kind of thing is like, okay, we could sit back here and kind of make judgments on society, and okay, well, yeah, this is the way society is, and right? And we'd probably be right, society sucks. And all of that's completely irrelevant based on like, what am I going to do about it, right? And in terms of what am I going to do in my own life, knowing that this is the case, right? Like, so let's say that, I'm a victim of forces beyond my control, whatever the case may be. It's like, okay, that's not a belief that's going to help me do anything except have a really good reason for why I couldn't do the things I wanted to do.
The cards, man. It was the
cards, man. It was the cards, versus like, dude, if you have the right mindset, you can still win the game that you're playing. And I think to whatever extent that we can, this is not just for Amber, but for myself, it's like to whatever extent that we have friends, we have people we love in our circle that are, feeling like they're, at the victim of something or whatever the case may be. It's like, dude, I get it. And you probably are. And there's not a magic wand that's going to be waved in our lifetime that's going to take that away. So like, how can you, what mindsets can you have to tackle what's in front of you to where you can win the game that you're playing, and even more so, like, how can I help you win the game you're playing, whatever that is,
can you build happiness with those cards? And there might be some cards that really can't be, I don't think anyone that's living in America, you have at least above a 7 deuce offsuit in America, right? So it's like you've got something you can work with, and can you build like the giant mansion with 12 cars and all this other stuff? It's like, well, maybe not that, but maybe you can build something that you would really be proud of and enjoy, and feel like you brought something to the table. You contributed to your fellow man or woman or them.
Or, yeah, exactly. And it's not like, dude, like there's only one winner, like only the richest person wins, it's like, no, you can still win, plus if you believe in reincarnation, you can come back and try again, so so
If you do a really
yeah,
good job of it here, then like maybe you do get to try it out as well. But you'll screw that up and we got to come back.
yeah, just come back and play again. Exactly.
Like,
Play again. Oh man. Well, so what do you want to take down for topics today?
well, so I do want to give a little bit of a travel report.
Oh
So,
yeah. Oh yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
Do it.
this week, uh, rebuy. Yeah. So this week I was in Phoenix at a university there, Arizona Christian. Really cool little place, by the way. And they hosted me to give a series of talks on AI and higher education.
Oh,
And that
okay.
was really fun. I mean, obviously, like their hospitality was great. Their faculty were super engaged and everything. But this is like this massive thing that is happening to higher ed right now, and we're going to be education is going to be affected by AI to a greater degree and earlier than a lot of other industries.
How so?
So, well, because what we're doing is the kind of thing that can be duplicated by AI. So I was talking to my wife's stepbrother, so my stepbrother-in-law, and he drives dump trucks, like the really really big ones, very specialized work. And he was telling me some of the stories about like some of the really crazy deliveries where he's got these bizarre inclines that he's having to navigate and traction issues and timing and weather and everything in order to get whatever it is that's in the back of this truck to the site where it's supposed to go. And we were talking about like how could that ever be duplicated using AI? Uh-oh. I think I lost him. Is he back? Is he coming back? We're spinning. Has he returned? Has the chosen one returned? I can hear clicking, but I can't see him. Oh, there he goes. He's back.
What up?
Yeah. So anyway, thing is that there's so much information that he's bringing in, like the idea of a self-driving car or a self-driving dump truck doing all the stuff that he's got to do and the kind of experience that he would have. I mean, okay, maybe that can be replaced by robots, but that is years and years and years away. What most professors do, especially if you're deeply into the online education, is text comes in, text goes out. So, right?
Mm-hmm.
So student writes a paper, text in, right? You read the paper and then you write comments, text out. Or there's a discussion forum post and your students are writing stuff and you read that, text in, and then you provide comments, text out.
So the whole thing
Basically,
can be replaced by AI.
today, right? That is the really wild part about it. So we were talking about like, well, building an online class used to take an entire semester. There's all these things that you'd have to do, content you'd have to create. You'd have to write scripts for videos. You have to do all this stuff. All that stuff can be done for you now in seconds. You'd be able to turn out an entire class in a couple hours, just an afternoon. And then when it comes time to actually teaching the class, you can have AI grade it. And people are like, well, no, I mean, in the future. I was like, no, today you can have AI grade it. And I was showing them, like, here's a demonstration. Here's paper, goes in. Here's the comments that comes out. It's like, these are better than most of the TAs that I've had in terms of how good the comments are, how complete they are, how insightful they are.
So you certainly don't need TAs anymore.
TAs are done.
Yeah.
TAs are done, at least for the humanities.
Well, or maybe the professor needs somebody to actually talk to the AI. It's like that dude from Office Space. No, I deal with the engineers.
Yeah.
So the
I have
customers don't have
people skills.
I have people skills.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like that. Like, what are we even doing here? So our industry is about to be profoundly disrupted and fast. And I'm not sure really which direction it's going to go. Is it going to go to higher productivity on the part of faculty? Is it going to be a race to the bottom in terms of educational costs? So, I mean, here's what would be fascinating.
I don't see how it can't be, frankly. I mean, don't you think that's the first area that would be impacted, would be the cost of so-called education?
Well, so-called. Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Not talking about what you do.
Oh, sure. No.
Yeah.
That's like when it's like when we're talking with our little brother about the police, and we're like, "Yeah, police, they're all trash, or whatever." But not you. You're fine.
Yeah.
You're fine. Yeah. No, but with the education side, the productivity gains are real, but the question is, who is going to reap the benefits of those productivity gains? So, like, let's say me, as pretend I was teaching an online class, and I had several classes. Let's say I have 200 students, and my workload for teaching those 200 students gets cut not in half, but it's like 1/10 the amount of work that it was taking me to do earlier. And the amount of work that I am doing is really just kind of the interesting, unusual bits that the AI doesn't know how to handle, and so I get the fun, interesting things.
Right.
So my job is easier now, and so if I reap the benefit, everything else stays the same. But now I have more time to research, to read, to refine, to enjoy my discipline as a professor. I'm now writing more, all that.
Publishing, speaking,
absolutely.
being a thought leader.
Yeah. Being a thought leader, yeah. Intellectual influencer.
Yeah.
But then the administration notices this. They're like, dude, Maddie's working like 1/10 the amount that he was earlier, and we're paying him the same amount.
And instead of complimenting you,
they said that great job. So now here's 10 times as many students. And your workload has not changed. Like, yay, we were paying you this earlier, we're paying you this now. And actually, maybe you get like 5% or 10% less number of hours that you're actually working. So, like, cool for you. But then now the administration is able to charge tuition for 10 times as many students for the same output, thinking of yourself as like an assembly line, right? Or a production line, right? Money goes in, credit hours comes out. It's like, oh my gosh, same amount of money in, 10 times as many credit hours out. This is incredible.
Incredible.
Right. So then the administration wins for a while. They benefit. Professor doesn't benefit as much anymore. Now, other schools start doing the same thing. And then they start to realize, wait a second, if everything is being done by AI and everybody's productivity is super high, then what justifies me charging as much in tuition if the amount that I'm paying the professor and the equipment that's being used has just gone down by a factor of 10? What's happening to my tuition? And if I can cut my tuition, then I can undercut those guys. I'm still making a lot of money. And so everybody does that, right? We get that race to the bottom until your education costs almost nothing. Now, if that happens, then great. The student just benefited, and I'm all about student benefiting. So amazing.
You're a true educator.
But I don't think that's what's going to happen. But so that's kind of like the question of like, who's going to benefit and when? Is there something to get ahead of?
Well, I don't see how that would not happen. They have to figure out some other way to differentiate. Like,
here's how you do it.
Okay.
Your degree is only worth something if it's regionally accredited. So regional accreditation is almost like a union, but it's a union of the schools. So if they say, look, we're not going to allow X, Y, and Z to continue and still have your classes be accredited, then they can block that stuff. So if some upstart comes out there and says, we're going to do it all for 1/3 the price, your classes are now $75, $25 a credit hour, and your whole degree costs, $1,000, and that's it. Well, that undercuts everybody else. And so like that union effect, they can be like, no, you're not allowed to do that. And our rules say that you can only AI grade a certain amount. And here's how many students per professor, so that they can protect themselves.
But doesn't the ultimately, like, the caliber of accreditation, who determines that? Like, is that a government thing, or it's a
Semi, right? So regional accreditors are so like the one that I'm a part of, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools
oh
is
yes,
Texas, Louisiana,
Sachs.
up into Virginia, right? Liberty is part of our group, so this is a large geographical area. They set policies and they audit schools every year. Every year, every 5 years, you get audited. Every 10 years, you get like the big audit, and that passing that audit allows you, first of all, to have access to this um, cabal, I guess, so like your transfer credits work for
It's not a
theirs.
cabal. It's a cartel.
Cartel, yeah. Your athletes, and when they transfer, they can transfer to other schools within. And also from the federal government, if you're regionally accredited, you can accept federal student aid money, which is most of how schools balance their budget is with grants and mostly student loans. Most students can't actually afford college.
So the government, the federal government in this case, determines which accreditation bodies are worthy of being recipients of, say, Pell Grants,
Uh, yeah, they
right?
recognize those regional accreditors.
So
The regional
so
accreditors all have
so
cartels, so they don't compete with each other and so on.
so feasibly, there could be a new accreditation standard that comes out. Say a cluster of these schools say, okay, we're now accrediting ourselves as the X,
Sure.
and as long as they hit the federal targets, then they can receive money. And no,
No, because to hit to be, it's not like there's a federal target. Like as soon as you do these things, then the federal government will recognize you. It's that it's like the ones that are already there. you know,
but the federal government doesn't have any interest in perpetuating these cartels. They work with them because it works.
you've never heard of regulatory capture, I see.
I'm not saying that. Of course, there's regulatory capture. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that with the well, and that's a nice segue into the news of the day, because of all the slash and burn that's happening
Well,
on the federal level.
so
Uh,
this is one of those things. Like if the DOE came out and said, okay, in order to still be recognized as a regional accreditor, you have to do X, Y, and Z or change these policies or whatever, then and there's a lot of levers that they could use to do it. It's just that they usually don't do that stuff because it's a regulatory capture. I mean, they're basically an arm of
yeah,
the
yeah.
university system. So it would take a very different DOE head in order to push something like that,
Well, I
which we
mean, they're
may
just
have.
gonna
I mean, that may
they're
be happening. So
yeah, they're just gonna abolish it, man, and it won't be a
the
thing
DOE,
anymore. Yeah,
if
Department
they
of
do,
Education gone.
if the DOE is gone, most colleges and schools will go down with it because they're so dependent on federal student aid.
Because they're not participating in the free market of what people would actually pay.
Well,
It's
yes, because
yeah,
they don't have to.
because they don't. Yeah,
They
exactly.
don't have
Good
to.
for them. Good for
Yeah.
them. I'm not a student, but like by the time that my kids are ready to go to school, I'm going to be a lot more incensed about it. But I
Well,
don't. To me, there's not a. Well, am I mistaken? As I'm listening to you, like obviously you're in that world, and you're you see it probably differently. But I mean, is there anything about that situation that seems to be in the interest of students and people getting an education? That didn't sound like it to me.
well, peripherally. So
Oh well,
if
that's good. That's nice. It
yeah,
just
so
peripherally, this entire industry, which purports to be about this thing, it actually, like in a small way, does do that
well,
unintentionally.
so you have to look at a school and look at what's the percentage of their budget that they spend on instruction. And
Hmm.
most of these places are not for profit, and so like their books are public. You can go look and say, okay, well, for classrooms and education, teaching, lab space, how much are they spending on education itself, and how much of it is spent on other stuff like beautiful cafeterias, or like the joke back in the early 2000s was the climbing wall and in the state of the art gym, and all this other stuff. What me and my friends call affectionately like the cruise ship.
Right.
you're on this beautiful cruise ship where everything is provided for. There's student life, and you get free T-shirts for participating in this and that, and we have intramurals, and like all this stuff is going on. All this stuff costs money.
Look at the beautiful uniforms. Aren't they beautiful, John?
Aren't they beautiful? But that's that. The thing is that parents and students, when they go visit schools to determine where they're going to go, those are usually things that seal the deal.
For sure. Yeah. That's all you can put it, recruiting is the byline that would sit under, right? So
right. So if you say, well, look, all this money is being, wasted or whatever. It's like, well, if you spent all your money on education, you wouldn't have any students because they'd all go to the place with the fancy cafeteria and all this other stuff. So as a result, the money, since the money is being guaranteed by the federal government through the student loan programs and grants, then this actual person at the time of purchase doesn't have to pay anything. Like you walk in and you say, I want to go to school here. And they're like, that's amazing. We'd love for you to go to school here too. Fill out these forms, whatever. Here's your package. Maybe there's a small payment that you have to make every month.
Sign your life away.
When you graduate, all this stuff becomes due.
We got you for the rest of your life. Yeah.
Well, we don't as the school because we just hand you off to the feds. Right. Someone else will handle that, repayment. We already got ours.
To me, it's such a racket, man.
Well, but the thing is that it is student-driven racket because if the students ever said en masse, it's like, why are these dorms so nice? My grandparents went to school. It was in an army barracks. Like they're, lined up in a row. Like that was a dormitory. Like what's all this? It's like a luxury hotel. I'm not going to pay for that. And you're like, well, you don't have to pay for it. You pay for it later. And you're like, that's exactly the moment that I don't want to pay for it. Like,
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, so I guess it's the student's choice to do this for themselves until they kind of wise up. Then,
whenever
I think part of it is too, though, that the idea that like, oh, if I don't do this, it's kind of like back in the day when the Catholic Church would sell indulgences, right? It's like, hey, the only way you get through heaven is through us, and we just said you couldn't unless you eat these crackers, and we can't let you eat the crackers unless you put money in the thing. So
yeah, when the coin in the coffer rings, a soul from Purgatory Springs.
Purgatory Springs, exactly. Yeah. It's like, well, at some point you gotta give up the delusion to get out of the racket, right? And the delusion is here that it's absolutely necessary that I get, a degree, or I'm not going to have a good life, and
Well, and there's some degrees. I think if you want that particular role in society, you got to get the degree.
Sure.
Like, you go into law, medicine, engineering, nursing, right? You need that. The degree is the certification, the licensure goes through that path. If you want to be a psychoanalyst, so many other things in life. If you don't want one of those,
dude, I was going to be a psychiatrist. That was like one semester. For one semester, I was like, psychology's cool. I like understanding how people think. Let me check that out.
I wonder why my friends are so weird. What
a great job. You can sit in this office and wear a sweater and listen to people just talk and smoke a pipe, whatever. And dude, it took me like one semester. I was like, man, I got enough problems of my own. I don't need to listen to your problems. That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good.
Let me focus on something else. I don't want to ask how you feel about your mother anymore. Like that's done.
Yeah. And two, you're like this close to be like, dude, move past it.
Snap out of it.
That's why I came to see you. And I can't do anything for you. You're the only one that can do that.
Yeah. The answer is within.
Yeah, the answer is within. Well, it's so funny, man. I was listening to this psychiatrist talk. So I can't remember what this was about, but they were talking about how the temptation in psychiatry is to affirm the person's
experience.
Delusion. Exactly. Their experience. Perfect word. So like, hey, you're having this experience, and so I need to affirm your experience, and then let's talk about what it means, how you feel about that, and so help you process the experience so you can move through the experience. And this one psychiatrist, this panel or whatever, and he's like, He's like, that's the last thing that we should be doing. Like the whole point of why do you go see a psychiatrist? It's because something's not working. And so you come there and you talk about the thing that's not working. Well, how am I supposed to affirm? You're obviously doing it wrong. You're thinking wrong.
Yeah.
It's not whatever you're doing isn't working for you. Like if I'm affirming you, like that's the worst thing I can possibly do. Like
How is that
yeah,
helping?
how does that help you? I'm like, oh, that's interesting. You're interested in results. Very very unusual. And I didn't know that they did that in your work.
Not all your clients will be, but the ones that are will appreciate it.
We'll appreciate it. Yeah, yeah.
But just to wrap that up, like it was
Yeah.
a really cool trip.
How did you
And
feel?
it was,
Like, did you feel like you made an impact with what you had to say, or like, did you have a?
yeah, well, I mean, that group of faculty, they're very concerned about making sure the students were not harmed by this. Like both on the side of like having assignments that were meaningful when you can, there's a co-pilot key sitting on your keyboard, it's like,
Right.
how can we put together an assignment that actually helps you, advance your career prospects with this new technologies out there? And they're very serious about that. Like that was pretty cool. But the other thing was there's so much hype swirling around that just having someone sit there and go like, here's how this works. Here's the parts that, when someone says that it can do this, they're lying to you. That doesn't work. But when it says that they can do this, that's true. And here's how it works. Here's a demonstration of it. And so I think just having kind of cutting through the nonsense noise, yeah, I think was probably helpful. Especially, like I said, since they were very serious about like making this work, making this something positive for their students and their campus. So it's like, great, let's figure this out. And of course, since I have like weird views on what the mind is and stuff, I got plenty of angry comments, we're like, wait a minute, hold on. Are you saying that it's thinking? I'm like, well, I don't even know what thinking really is, so I can't even say that I'm thinking, but we use that word and that seems, and they're just like, like, sorry, you asked a philosopher what thinking was. Like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Wrong person.
Hey, you paid me to come here and talk.
Yes,
I have to explain myself to you. What does it all mean? That's for you to figure out.
Yeah, I don't know. Here's 500 options. All of them are probably wrong. So,
yeah, exactly. To the best of our knowledge. Yeah, the whole idea of thinking, right? Like, are you generating these thoughts? Or are you an antenna for some greater consciousness that's speaking through you? To what extent? Yeah.
What's been really fun, if you've been seeing on the news the last couple of days, the DeepSeek stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's I was going to ask you
So
about.
I've been playing with it quite a bit. And
I downloaded it on my phone, so I'm sure they know everything about me now.
One of the wildest things about it, so I've been running it locally. One of the wildest things about it is that when you ask a question, normally in one of these generative AI systems, it starts predicting the next word, right? And predicting the next word winds up getting you a lot. Predicting the next word can get you good translation, pretty good code writing, poetry, all sorts of stuff. What this one does, though, is instead of doing the next word, just starts generating an answer. It starts doing next word generation for an internal monologue, which you can then open up and look at, like,
and watch.
What was its train of thought? So I gave it some pretty advanced logic homework. I'm like, let's see if you can figure this out.
Yeah.
And so it starts out like, okay, this is a logic homework. Okay, what is this premise? Oh, wait, this premise and this premise, are they inconsistent with each other? I don't know. Let me try it a different way. And it's just like going. And as I'm watching it, I'm like, these are mentally like the train of thought. This is exactly what I want my students to do. It's this. And it's like honing in on an answer. Well, I mean, could there be a misprint? No, it wouldn't be a misprint because the user gave it to me and I got to assume that it's right, so, and then by the time it gets to the end, it's like, I think the point was that these premises are inconsistent. And so this has to be the result. That's probably what he was going for. And then the reasoning stops and it produces the answer. And the answer is perfect. It's beautiful. And it was amazing watching this, because it's like, how different is this to what we're doing? Because, and this is something I challenged that group, we don't think in terms of sentences. Human beings don't. And if you ever try to do this, it's fascinating. See if you can catch yourself when you're talking, do you know the end of the sentence that you are starting when you start talking?
Yeah, no,
Almost never.
yeah.
It's not like you think of a whole
I,
sentence in your
I
mind.
knew the answer to
Read
that.
it
I don't know what I'm about to say anytime I open my mouth.
Right. Well, nobody does. That's the thing. Nobody does. Like you'll start the sentence, and then as the sentence is going, it's like, well, what's next? And you just fill it in, and it's like, so they said, well, predicting one word at a time. I mean, that's not reasoning. And it's like, well, then what exactly do you think you're doing when you talk? And how many times do you talk in order to think out loud? We say that we're thinking out loud.
Mm-hmm.
How different is it? And I think this is a big open question. Like the reason it's able to give really good answers to a lot of stuff is because it's more like us than we give it credit for. I mean, it's built off of our rationality. So I mean, it's not
Right.
that surprising, but it's I think we don't notice that we have a sequential kind of intelligence as well. And we think we think in like full complete stuff.
Grand schemes and
It's like, why did you say
broad
that?
brush strokes.
It's like, why did you say that word? It's like, well, because of my rationality. I'm like, what is that? What are you talking about?
I can only speak for myself. I said it because of verbal advantage. It's several Harvard educators came together and put some cassette tapes together, and I listened
I've
to
learned
them.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah, verbal
So anyway,
advantage.
it was a great trip, and I think it was really heartening to know that people notice this is going on within the industry, and they're trying to do something good with it instead of just kind of being steamrolled by whatever it is that's going to come out next.
Well, that's exciting.
That was nice.
Yeah, that's exciting. And how were you connected with it? Like, obviously you're a speaker, but
One of their vice presidents is an old friend of mine,
okay.
and so when they were like, "Hey," we'd talked about some of the AI stuff before, and when his faculty was really interested in trying to come to grips with some of this stuff, he's like, "I know somebody," and so I got the call from him.
That is really cool, man.
Yeah.
When I saw you rented that cherry
The
red
Charger.
Charger. I tell you what, man, Dodge. I've said this. I mean, since the time I drove my first new Challenger, I mean, those cars are terrific.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was a lovely car, and my wife was very kind of surprised by the way I drove it because
You're aggressive. You're all like,
oh man, I'm like cutting people off and like peeling out of the red light, and it's just permanently in sport mode the whole time. And she's just like, I don't remember.
who are you?
What is this? Because she's only seen me drive like little, SUVs.
Well, it's funny. It's funny, like just the whole your outside presentation. I just noticed this for myself. Like, if I put on like a long-haired, rock and roll wig or something, and just my entire demeanor will change, or like if I dress up this way or that way or whatever. Yeah, dude. And it's like my patterns of speech change, everything changes. And I think a lot of people are like that. It's like, you put on the suit and tie and, you're just more formal, you present more formal, you speak more formal, you just, or you're, I can't stand it. How do I get out of this monkey suit? Whatever.
Suit.
Yeah.
Well, and it didn't help that the last time I'd driven a muscle car was when I was 20, and I had that, huge classic Oldsmobile. So it's like, oh, it's 20-year-old me is still back there somewhere. Woke up and you're like, you rang?
Yeah.
Can I take over now? Like, yes, you may. Please enjoy.
What's real fun is when you meet the 7-year-old you that's still in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I've definitely bought things that I'm like, little kid me would have really appreciated this.
In fact, he does.
Yeah. And it's like I want to have this so that if any point there's like a time travel or something and someone goes back and talks to me, it's like, what happened in my life? I'm like, don't worry, it was amazing. Like all the things that you said that you wanted to do that you thought would be out of reach, you did them. Even if they're like dumb, you did it anyway. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I love it, man.
Little kid.
Well, dude, congratulations. Hopefully the first of many more speaking engagements to come. So
I'd like that. We'll see what happens. Yeah. I got to write up some of it. I think a little bit of it's original. So I'd like to write it up and see if I can get it published somewhere.
Well, so what do you think in terms of these AI models that just came out, from China. So for those of you that are watching, don't know, didn't hear, China dumped, I think, six, uh, at least at least three.
Few.
I know. Yeah. What's
Yeah,
that?
a
Yeah.
few models. Yeah.
A few AI models that are uh, that rival the ones that we have here, if not are better, right?
Mhm.
And they do it. What I think what makes it so significant is number one, they're all open source, so you can see exactly how they're working, which is very cool. Number two, they're done at a fraction of the price point that, like, I mean, we've invested. I mean, I think like OpenAI. I mean, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars of investment in
Yeah.
that. Gemini. I mean, they've spent well over 50 billion on that. All these different AI models,
Yep.
and these guys did this for what was it? What was the number? It was
Well,
like
so the cost is a little controversial
well,
because
but
yeah, because they had bought the hardware for something else,
oh, I
basically,
see. And
and
they're not,
so
yeah, okay, but
so
that's fine.
they're
Whatever.
not counting that, but they're counting like the expense of running it, and the expense
Okay,
of running it is about 1/25th. So
of what?
not 25% less, one
1/25th.
twenty-fifth
So
the cost.
if it costs you $1 to generate to do it, use a token on, Chat GPT, it would cost you 5 cents to generate the same token, or actually 4 cents
Four
to generate
cents.
the same token on what's it
Deep
called?
sea.
Yeah, DeepSync. I have it on my I have it on my literally on my phone right here,
Yeah.
my home screen. Um, that's the first thing, and then the second thing is that it's they did it on hardware that supposedly wasn't supposed to be able to do this. So like
Mhm.
I guess Nvidia, it makes all these chips for AI, and that's why their stock price has gone through the roof. Is everybody thought you have to have these particular chips to handle this kind of computing power, and even to the point where Biden and they'd all like saying like no, none of these chips get sent to China and all this
None
other
of the
kind of
new ones.
stuff.
Yeah.
None of the
Yeah.
new ones, and they did all of this on lower generation chips. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you saw, Nvidia had the largest 1 day stock
Yeah.
loss of any company in history,
Yep.
American history. Um,
Well, and that's undeserved, and I think
well, sure, but like people are like, oh well, I mean, maybe you're not all that special if you need to even use these.
no, well, so I think people misunderstand just how much computing power AI can use. So think about it as like I don't know what other version of this there would be, but it's like okay, when the Manhattan Project,
Yep.
and they're like okay, we're going to start building centrifuges, and we're gonna refine enrich uranium, and it's like, well, how many centrifuges do you need? And it's like, however many you give us is not enough. It will take
Right.
as many the more centrifuges you can give us, the faster we
We'll
can get
we'll
it
take
done, the
them.
better we can get it done, the higher quality it
Right.
can be done. But it will absorb all of the resources that are offered to do it. It's not like we're going to run out and we're like, oh man, these last 500 of them we didn't need. It's like, no, we'll use all of them.
Right.
Um, so AI right now is kind of like that. The algorithms that we have, um, they will absorb all of the computing power that can be thrown at them. So the fact that they were able to do this with older hardware means that that companies using the same methods, which some of the methods, by the way, are really quite original. Um, People using the same methods on newer hardware will get even better models as a result. So this isn't like, oh, we didn't need it and this is good enough. It's like it's not going to be good enough for decades.
Hmm.
As much as we want to throw, much computing power as we want to throw at this, it will absorb.
Well, and
So
somebody was criticizing their effort. I was listening to somebody over the weekend, and they were saying, well, like the only reason they were able to do this is because they borrowed all this other stuff that they'd already seen, because of stuff that we did. And it's like, okay,
yeah,
yeah, but you guys are
that's called
about
open
to,
source.
now that I mean, they released it open source, so like you guys are about to go through there and mine that and to
Yep.
extract all the So I mean, I think um, that's just to me that's a good thing. That's all of us borrowing from each other.
Well, and some of the stuff that they did, I think, is really interesting. So, if you watched the NVIDIA keynote at CES just a few weeks ago, one of the things that they were talking about is their big breakthrough. They're working on AI models for like self-driving cars and robotics. So they're not thinking about like text generation models that much. They're thinking about how do you get stuff out in the real world to interact with the real world using
Driving. Well,
cameras.
I know. Yeah, they had robots and all kinds of stuff there. It was very
Well,
cool.
here's the problem: is that the training data is I don't want to say insufficient, but like really incomplete. So like, okay, your self-driving car, you have one, right?
Yep.
So they've got all these cameras on them, and all these cameras are beaming information back. And so they have tons and tons and tons of footage of driving down the highway. And it's like, how much more footage of driving down the highway do you need in order to train the model? Basically none. but the tricky stuff is like, well, what if you're in a snowstorm and there's a bear over there next to the road?
Well, right.
How much footage
well,
do we have of that?
And I mean, I'll just speak from my own personal behavior. I'm sure I'm not unique. Anytime I get into a situation, it's a little bit, not even hairy, but just like, okay, I'm, I'm waiting to take a right turn here, and I'm going to go ahead and I know I'm going to act faster than this robot is. And so I just turn it off and do what I do. And then I put it back on when it's, nice and peaceful. So it's getting 99.999% of stay in your lane, and not a lot of the lane changing and,
Oh yeah.
driving expertise that you need.
So one of the things that people are, I think this is a rule of thumb. I can't remember who said this, but it's a great analogy. But it's like data is the new crude oil.
Right.
Right. So it's like, okay, we need data to train these models on, but if most of the data we have is going in a straight line down the freeway, what about all the stuff?
We need the right kinds of data.
What about all these corner cases that we got to train on? So one of the things that NVIDIA was very proud of was that they now had the ability, using AI image generation and video generation, to create synthetic data to then train the self-driving or the robotics AIs against. And they had it set up to where it's like, you put the cameras where the cameras would be on the device, you build out like the factory or the roads or whatever, you have the thing drive, you can create a bunch of random events, and it will create perfect images as though they were taken by the cameras in the vehicle itself of whatever it is that you want them to see, photorealistic, everything. And then we can use that. We can create our own crude oil, basically, to feed to the algorithms. Really cool.
Genius.
Genius. But everyone said it couldn't be done because you would basically get into a feedback loop. The errors that were in the training data will just get replicated over and
amplified. Yep.
So they finally figured this out. NVIDIA says they figured it out for images and video for training this stuff. Great. What DeepSeek did was they did the same thing, but to text. And this one, I thought myself, wouldn't work. That you couldn't use synthesized text, like text coming out of an LLM, to then train another LLM. Like whatever hallucinations or problems or loops or woodenness or whatever would just get passed on. But it turns out that's not the case. So
because these things think for themselves,
or they do something. They do their output quality. Turns out you actually can. Now you have to be very careful about how you do it, how you generate that, like what prompts you're using, and those prompts themselves are AI generated. So you have AI generated prompts to give you AI generated output, and that output is then used to train the next one. So you don't need to keep going. That's one of the things.
Now you can iterate so much faster because
because you don't have to sit here and go like, wow, what would be really nice if we had more text from Reddit, but Reddit is closed all their APIs. They're going to charge us millions of dollars to access their posts. And so now we have the old ones that are archived that we can keep training against, but that's a finite set. And it's like, well, no, now we have an infinite set of text. We can just make it ourselves. The thing generates text. Again, I thought it wouldn't work, but it turns out it does.
Yeah. I was listening to Rogan a few weeks ago, and he was talking about how that's the new idea, is that when you zoom out tens of thousands of years, right? And just kind of look at the human experience, that
Mhm.
actually, you know, a few hundred years from now, or maybe 1,000 years from now, whatever you want to call it, but that really humanity's job on Earth was to incubate this new life form, and that we are giving birth to this new life form, which will be this. I mean, I forget what they're calling it. They're calling it general AI.
Oh yeah,
Is that right?
AGI, yeah, artificial
AGI,
general intelligence. You know,
artificial general intelligence. Yeah.
if that ever is the case, I think this would be really interesting. So, like, let's say we colonize Titan, right, the moon of Saturn, right? They
I was
have
like, how are we going to colonize Mars? Blah blah blah. We won't have to. AI will, and they
well, no,
will. They will carry us forward.
yeah. So that's the thing.
Because
It's
they
like
are us.
they are right. That
Yeah.
would be the dream here. Is that like in the same way that you or I might have a conversation over, what's the best way to organize a society, or it's like, is Mozart overrated, and or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
That
Right.
they will have the same conversations, and so it's actually us. It's like who colonized Titan in that case? It's like, oh, it was the robots. It's like, no, it wasn't. It was us.
It was us.
We
Yeah.
colonized that, right?
Those were. Yeah. Yep.
Those those are that's our cultural heritage that they're
Dude,
for.
you got to watch. Have you seen that movie Transcendence?
Ooh, the name sounds familiar. Let me look. Transcendence? Who's in it?
If you haven't watched, Johnny Depp and who is the girl? Is it Ashley?
2014. I'm not gonna watch that. That's an old movie.
Is it Ashley Judd? Who's the girl in it? So it's Morgan Freeman,
Rebecca
Johnny
Hall,
Depp.
Paul Bettany,
Yeah,
Cillian Murphy, Kate Mara,
I mean, dude. I
Morgan
mean, like,
Freeman.
yeah. I mean, it's all star cast, right?
Ooh, Elon Musk is in it. What?
Is he really?
Yeah, as himself.
As himself. So yeah, it's I mean, it's very dark. So I
All
mean, it's
right,
very
I'll check
exciting.
it out.
It's very exciting, and then it gets very dark. But it's actually interesting because it leaves you with some really interesting questions to ponder afterwards. And I think especially now because of what we are actually watching with AI. It's not. It's so weird because I'm like, dude, it's like every day you wake up and it's like you're in the middle of a science fiction movie. It's like
This
it's
has
like
just
this
been
is
developed.
this is real, and I can play with it right now. Like when they dumped those language model. I mean, that's the first thing I did is went out and grabbed one. It's like, and of course now that I have my Linux computer, I just realized, oh, there's literally a plugin that I can plug into my desktop environment, build an LLM on the computer, and then interact with it completely in a sandbox, like completely.
Yep.
I mean, it's very cool that this is like, wow, I could just create this right here in my living room. I mean, it's fascinating, and this is stuff that you couldn't dream that you could do that stuff,
No.
even just a few years ago.
No. Like if you'd told me 10 years ago that this I was going to solve my grading calculation problem by having an AI running on my own hardware that I conversed with and had it teach me how to do the programming. And that it was like a full conversation. And I could say like, well, this didn't work. Why not? It's like, I don't know. Let's try this or try that. And it's like, oh, that one worked. He's like, great. I'll remember that for next time. And like having
Literally like
like
Jarvis.
it could have been, it could have been another person on the other end of that. And I wouldn't have known other than the fact that they type really fast. but that was possible. Like I think, I mean, when we were kids, the kind of like that would have been, they would have just said, if someone had asked like, well, do you think it's sentient? Like the answer would have been, well, obviously. Like
Right.
if you'd handed them that technology then, but the fact that it's been built up over time is what the joke is. It's like sentience is always the thing that we don't have yet.
Right.
So it's like, well, is it sentient? Well, not yet.
Well,
we can't do this.
Or like if you think about and maybe I'm mischaracterizing your story, but it sounded to me like there was a little bit of discomfort with the idea that these computers could think in your audience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so just the what gives you that discomfort, right, is like, it's like, wait a minute, I know we're different and we're superior and we're, I mean, we're humans, uh, and it's not, and
Mhm.
but what is it? And so it's like, oh, we're just going to call it sentience, and we're just going to say, yeah, it doesn't have it yet, even though, I mean, it's more sentient than my son. He can't pay attention to anything, you know?
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I mean, that's a good point. Like, I there it doesn't have to be the same as you or better than you to count as
right.
thinking, right? So if I said, "Well, look, when you ask it, did this idea make you mad?" And it says, "I don't think so, because I don't have emotions like you do." You know, is it is I mean, what is that supposed to mean, you know? Um,
Sounds just right out of Next Generation Star Trek, you know, Data. Oh, I do not have this emotion chip.
you know what might be really fun, especially the first few seasons, they're really trying to figure out like how
What to
data
do with
is,
that character? I need to go
yeah,
back
what
and
it's supposed to
actually
be.
watch.
And there's a lot of stuff in there. I think by the time you get to Voyager with the hologram doctor, the emergency medical hologram, they just treat him like a member of the crew, and it's fine. But with Data, there really is this thing of like, I don't know, like, why does he have a commission? Like, why does he have a rank? He's a computer, you know, like, I don't understand.
Right,
You
right,
don't give the computer in the ship a rank. Why is he?
right, right.
Um, and there's a lot of stuff there where it's like, you know, why is this? Why are we treating this thing like a person? And at the time in the 80s, you watch it and you're like, well, this is so futuristic. And of course, Brent Spiner is just such a wonderful actor. He's able to
Right.
imbue this humanity to almost no expressions at all. Like he's really great at it.
Yeah.
But watching it now and be like, okay, this is an LLM. They just gave rank to an LLM, and watch the react. Then suddenly the reactions of the crew make way more
Way more
sense
sense.
because it's
Yep.
something that you know is real. Like it's
Yep.
not like some weird futurist like the teleporter, the transporter stuff. It's like, well,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, why is the doctor so worried about the transporter? It's fiction, science fiction, and it's
Yeah.
like, no, this one's real now. So how do we feel about those episodes? I think it's
Hmm.
really an interesting task to, you know, consider what we, you know, how would we do that? What the first person who like your boss is the LLM.
Is the LLM. And yeah, exactly. I have to make this computer happy or I don't get a raise. But ironically, isn't that what we're all doing anyway? I mean, like, you know, in sales, or, you know, hey, I got to hit these quarterly numbers and, you know, we got to have the stock price to go up. And it's all literally managed by some computer system that's gathering billions of trades and determining what the stock is worth. And therefore, I get to keep my job or I don't.
I think what would be really
Yeah.
wild is the first LLM boss, if people didn't know. It's like, well, we just communicate by email. Like
Mhm.
he's remote only and it's email. He keeps weird hours.
Yeah. He's like, he lives in Switzerland. He doesn't like talking to people, doesn't
Right.
want to be handed things.
Right. He's on Zoom. But
Yeah.
like you'd send emails and like an hour or two later, because it's all done in a way to make it more like if you get it instantly, it's a little
Then
stale.
you know the jig's up. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but especially if like your boss was like really responsive to you and had a lot of empathy for your situation, was able to like guide your career path and in a really useful way, and you're like, man, I worked better than I ever have before working for this guy.
Right,
Like,
right.
it's been amazing.
Encourage the best behavior out of you and help you
Yeah.
realize your potential. Yeah.
Yeah, occasionally we'll get upset, and you know, you have to talk him down just like you would any other boss, and it just feels normal. And you know, you find out when you get promoted, you're like, "Well, did the boss get promoted too? Like, am I moving up behind him?" You're like, "No, actually, he's on a server." Like you like point to the server, you know, the big IBM label
Yeah.
on the front of it, and blinking lights. Like that was the boss right there.
That's Wilson right there. Yeah.
That's Wilson. That's
Yeah.
Wilson.
It is
And when he
interesting, man.
retires, like, would we be sad? We're like, man, Wilson, he was the best.
He was the best, man.
Yeah.
He really cared about me. He cared about me. I hope he's happy.
Yeah. Hope they gave him a nice retirement, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good combo, man. Well, shit, we didn't get to any politics today. That's all right.
Well, I feel like it's still a little too fast. I wanna wait and see. I'll tell you, next week, I think we're gonna get like a cabinet appointee voted down or something between now and then. We'll have something really juicy to talk about. Right now, it's all like executive orders, and we're about to. It's coming. Like, let's wait,
Well, I mean,
see what's actually happening.
I've just been. I mean, my 2 cents is I've just been blown away at the, I mean, like it or hate it. I don't necessarily agree with everything that's being done, but it's amazing how fast it's being done. And it's also, yeah, I was slightly bemused at people who were like, I can't, can you believe, like, I'm like, dude, you're literally repeating what you were doing like 4 years ago. And this is the most predictable thing in the world. Like, it's not like he said he was going to do all this stuff and then, oh, now he's in office and he's doing, it's like a huge bait and switch. It's like, it's
Why
literally
would you do that?
exactly what he said. Like, and so I'm like, well, how is this surprising? Like, I mean,
Shouldn't be.
it's not a, and again, I mean, like, I'm not on the same page with everything, and some of it needs to be, fought. But it's not like it wasn't, it hasn't been foreseeable this whole time. And to me, it just gives me a very, what's the right way to say this? It gives me a very low level of confidence that the opposition, Democrats, whatever you want to call them, are really going to be very effective. Frankly, I think there's in the stages of grief, they're still in the stage of denial. It's like I was watching some conversation yesterday, and it was Pierce Morgan, and he had this person on, and his panels are always funny because he's become the Jerry Springer of panels. I mean, everybody's yelling over the top of each other, and you're a racist. No, you're a racist. Like, yeah, it's a little ridiculous, but it's always fun to watch. And sometimes you get somebody on there that's really thoughtful. He always has somebody on there that's really thoughtful. Then somehow somebody gets on there that's just got their head up their butt, and it's like, and they're still this person was still trying to relitigate. Like, well, I think what people forget is that he's a convicted felon, and this and this and this. It's like, well,
He never should have been on the ballot in the first place.
I'm like, dude,
he led an insurrection. Like,
you are
the 14th Amendment. He can't be
right.
president.
It's like, oh my god, it's like, dude, you need to process that and get with reality. It's like, dude, I can look at so many things in my own life and go, dude, it shouldn't be this way. I mean, so many things. This friend shouldn't have gotten cancer. This friend shouldn't have died in that motorcycle accident. This should have gone this way. I really should have gotten that promotion. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, I could go down the whole list and say why that was wrong and that was wrong and that was wrong. And at the end of the day, you got to get with reality and move forward. And it's like, and they are not.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot of voices. Now, I do see a couple, and I do see the couple that I have seen. I mean, of all people, Shank Uger, who I freaking love. Shank. I've been watching him for 15 years on the Young Turks. I mean, founder of the Young Turks. I mean, he is the last person I would have thought would have kind of okay, let's get aligned with not aligned as in I'm on your team, but like, hey, let's just get aligned with reality, and let's get aligned with the fact that the American people's priorities seem to be more here than here, and so that's fine. So then, again, like representative government, how do we give the people what they want, and at the same time, how do we make sure that we are steering the country in a way that's sustainable and grows for everyone?
Rational.
It sounds so right. It's like there's a line from The American President, that Michael Douglas movie, where he's like he's arguing with Martin Sheen, who later plays the president in West Wing,
right.
which is kind of cool, right? But anyway, they're arguing, and he's like, "Do you think you were wrong?" And the president says, "I don't think you win many arguments telling the American people they are."
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, exactly, man. Like, at the end of the day, dude, I mean, the voters have spoken. They saw everything that you were talking about, and they said it didn't matter. So why are you still talking about it? Like, find something else that does matter and go work on that. Like.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll be really interesting to see what kind of opposition forms. I think the original, if you look at the 2016 to 2020 resistance or whatever, a lot of it was focused on legal challenges. And I think that because of some of the Supreme Court decisions that have come out since, including the one on that favors a more unitary executive, that that may not be as good of a strategy. Also, the sort of shock and awe of EOs that have gone out, and it's like, how are you supposed to combat all
Which,
of those?
yeah, which one of these 500 things do I fight first? Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
to me, 100%,
And,
man. It's
and like
and it's
some of them can't be fought, like pardons. Like, yeah, we're gonna pardon all those Jan 6 people. And like, no, and
well,
like someone should stop it. I'm like, can't be stopped,
well, and I'll give you. That's not necessarily true. I mean,
Pardons?
they're actually talking. They're actually talking in the Trump White House right now of how they can stop some of Biden's pardons.
Right.
So I mean, at the end of the day, like obviously we can explore whatever we want to explore. I mean, this is that one thing we have learned is that everything that we thought was, etched in stone, uh,
We
is
don't
up
do
for
those things.
it's up for interpretation, really. You
Yeah.
know, and I think to, to to the point, like I mean, some of them are actually like very rational. Like for example, um, well, I'll give you one example that's just easy to talk about is this immigration thing. Okay, so 2015, right? He comes down the escalator, Mexicans, rapists, blah blah blah. Some are good people, right? And I just kind of was like, immediately, me personally, I was like, dude, that's outrageous. Can't believe you said
Yeah.
that. Like, obviously, I know a ton of Mexicans. They're
His political
great.
career is over before he even
Yeah, that's some racist stuff. You can't be saying that stuff. Okay. And then when he got elected, it's like, okay, well, I mean, he's still saying racist stuff. And so I kind of have this knee jerk, and I think most people that were like me, that were, more liberally minded, kind of have this knee jerk reaction to, hey, you got a Muslim ban, you're trying to throw out people that are just trying to like freaking make ends meet and and contribute to the economy. Like, how does that make any sense? Okay, and that at the time was a reasonable position. I mean, you could kind of take it or leave it. It's like, you know, um, do we want more immigration? Do we want less immigration? Do we want more immigration to the point that we're willing to tolerate some illegal immigration if they're good people, right? Like, uh,
Mhm.
and that was a totally fine conversation to have, and it's all about values, right? And you know, you guys are trying to turn these honest people into criminals, and yes, they broke a law, but does it really matter? It's not that big of a law, you know. And some of these same rationalities have been used on the right too, like, oh yeah, so he broke some laws, but they were process crimes, paperwork crimes, blah blah blah, like
Sure.
uh, victimless crimes. Okay, so both sides have basically said, we're only going to really pay attention to the laws that we care about. That's fine. Okay, so if but let's just step back and see that, like, okay, we really, this is more of a conversation, as it always has been for hundreds of years, about values, and we craft these laws to reflect our values, and then
Mhm.
hopefully they're administered in a way that's aligned with our values. And when they're not, then we make noise about it, right? And we do something to, that was an unintended consequence. Let's go ahead and amend that, right? That's what it is. I mean, that is the exercise.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, fast forward to today. I mean, you you, you can't you can't nobody that is taking an objective look at how many illegals how many people have illegally immigrated into the country over the last 4 years, and uh, how aligned every aspect of the federal government was aligned with bringing them in as fast as they could come in, and then ignoring, even when they were committing crimes, like pretending that there wasn't any crime, pretending that da da da. Overwhelmingly, these statistics this and these statistics that, and it's like, yeah, okay, I get all the statistics, but what about this little girl over here that was just
Murdered.
raped or what, murdered or whatever? It's like, dude, at some point, we just got to get real. Like, I mean, the public, they have moved now from
Mhm.
eh, we don't really care that much if somebody's here illegally, if they're not bothering anybody, like don't ask, don't tell kind of a thing, right? To uh, okay, maybe I'm still okay with that person, maybe, but overwhelmingly, we need to get these other bad actors out of here, and
Mhm.
and then you get people that are like voting against that, and you're like, dude, have you lost your mind? Like, I mean, this is overwhelmingly like a 80% issue. This is not even a jump ball. This is very clearly, the public is. I mean, CNN had a number out on Sunday. I don't know if you saw it, that
Mhm.
at in 2020, when Trump left office, uh, people trusted Democrats by 11%. 11% of people, they were 11 points higher on the trust value of, can you handle our immigration problem, right?
Okay.
4 years later, it's Republicans by 22%.
That's
So
a
that is a 33% swing in 4 years, right? And it's not a made up thing. It's that you have all of these stories that continue to come out, and nobody has taken it seriously. Nobody's done anything about it, and you have
Nobody's
these
been in
hearings.
charge.
Nobody's been in charge. And then when the people are called up in front of Congress to testify and answer for the situation, I'll have to get back to you on that. I have to get back to you on that. It's like, did you know there was a hearing today? Like, did you not prepare for it at all? Like, I mean, it's ridiculous.
But that's the thing.
And
It's like, I know everybody got mad at Alejandro Mayorkas, and they even tried to impeach him. But I mean, I think they fundamentally misunderstood what his job was. Like, they're thinking that the stuff that it says on paper about the Department of Homeland Security, like, aren't you supposed to be securing our nation's borders and stuff? And it's like, well, on paper, yeah, but like, what his real job was to make sure that money and influence went to the right NGOs and the right things got funded and the right people and the organizations. And so it's like, whatever is going on at the border, or whether someone comes into this country for whatever reason, I mean, it's like, that's not really what he's going to care about. And so he's just doing his job. Now we might say, well, I don't want DHS to be like that. I want DHS to like actually secure things. And it's like, well, that's what they voted for. But
exactly.
That's
and
not
I think
the way he understood his job. And that's not the way Biden or whoever the White House understood his job.
Right, because that wasn't the agenda. The agenda was, let's get as many people in here as we can, because there's a lot of money to be made and a lot of votes to be gotten and whatever else, and so it's like there's it brings you to something really interesting that I was going to talk about, if you have a minute, about the birthright citizenship thing. 1 minute. The birthright citizenship thing to me is one of these interesting kind of points of like pivot points, right? So like, when I first heard about this, I'm like, he had said it on the campaign trail, we're going to get rid of birthright citizenship. I'm like, good luck, because constitutional amendments are tough to do, right? And then, as you actually kind of like, I knew they were going to try it, and even when he did it, they signed it, I was like, okay, well, that's that's so he can check a box and say, I'm keeping that promise, and he knows it's going to get overturned.
It's going to get struck down instantly.
Right. Yeah. And you have 22 states that have all filed lawsuits against them, whatever, right? But interestingly, and I didn't know this until you start like actually looking at it and reading. If you read the amendment in the Constitution, it says if you're born in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction, that's what it says. If you're born in the United States and subject to its jurisdiction. So if you're visiting the United States on a holiday or something, you're not subject to its. I mean, yes, you have to obey the traffic laws, but you're not subject to its jurisdiction. You have an embassy. You belong somewhere else. You're.
Oh, he's gone again. His opinions were too offensive for this. I think we got blocked by somebody. Maybe he'll be back. It's hard to say. Should we wait? Gentle audience? I don't know. We'll wait a minute. See if he comes back. Maybe he ran out of battery. Wonder how batteries are on the new Macs. It's hard to say. Not owning one. Well, we seem to be experiencing some technical difficulties. I'm going to have to go. I have an appointment. But I think we're going to have plenty to say about the birthright citizenship next week. So we'll figure this out later, I think. But I will see you all next week. Have a beautiful week. And until then.